There's no denying 4.0 has gotten off to a rocky start, and while I've been one of the luckier ones in terms of playability, I'm well aware of the issues that many people within my org and the greater community have been going through. 4.01 is now on the PTU, and I hope this does mean the beginning of playability once again for the majority of backers, including an end to 324's live servers and a full transition to 4.0 live properly. I think CIG needs to cook this patch good and proper before letting it go anywhere near the live servers personally, especially if they want to remain true to Chris's word that moving forward, experimental features and test builds will remain on the test servers before being pushed to the live servers, and that CIG's focus is once again on playability this year. And I say once again because CIG has said this before. Typically, there are no major events throughout this quarter, which should give CIG time to hammer away without marketing breathing down their necks. These Q4 releases always point to pushes from marketing and sales, when focus should be on the development of the game and overall playability for the backers. In any case, instead of starting this year off too negatively and slamming Star Citizen 4.0 and how the end times are near, I wanted to take a look ahead instead at what features and milestones we could expect throughout 2025. And with server meshing online, I want to ask the question, is the worst of Star Citizen's development soon to be behind us? As a side note, a big welcome back to you, my fellow meatbags, and a huge thank you for your support throughout 2024. I really appreciate it. Some of you may have noticed I've opened up a single tier now on YouTube memberships. A huge thank you to those who have already become members. I've also begun live streaming on YouTube. You can find those streams in my live stream playlist or tune in at 1800 UTC, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Quick disclaimer, this is just for fun and guesswork on my part. Take it with a pinch of salt. The CIG's become more and more unpredictable lately, and please don't be shy in sharing your own predictions in the chat below. I always try to read and respond to every comment. So feature-wise, what could we expect in the first 4.1 quarterly update? And I use the term quarterly loosely, as historically this patch could arrive anytime between the end of Q1 and the end of Q2. Obviously, with their new approach and dedication to apparently making the game more playable, we may see a more strict adherence to the quarterly release updates. So let's first take a look at the features that were cut from 4.0 and are likely the furthest along in development and easy wins for CIG. Then we'll take a guess at some other more interesting features in development that could make the 4.1 window as well. Engineering, fire, and life support is obviously a big one, which seemed to be quite far along before it was cut prior to 4.0's release, in order to give more breathing room for server meshing and back-end tech. Many ships are outfitted with fuses and the power management MFDs are in, so I hope to see engineering start providing a much-needed strength to some multi-crew ships in 4.1. But I think it will be some time before we see engineering come along for every single multi-crew ship. I experienced solar bursts in Pyro during the late 2023 tech preview, and to me, they seemed pretty solid and far along in their development. However, devs did confirm they had trouble syncing them across server meshing boundaries, which is why they were cut from the initial release of 4.0. These do add a nice environmental hazard and unique flavor to Pyro, and they should provide another mechanic for engineers to interact with should your ship be struck by one of these solar bursts. And the way engineers might interact with these is using the charge drain mechanic, also cut from 4.0, that might make it in with engineering. This is more beamy tech added to your multi-tool, which you'll be able to use to overcharge components, providing a temporary buff to their related systems, and distortion draining to help keep components from shutting down in the face of distortion weapons, EMPs, and solar bursts. There's a few other small elements that might start coming online from 2023 as well, things like ground vehicles and freight elevators, if we're lucky. More big changes to the flight model will be coming this year, and some of these could start coming online with 4.1 to coincide with engineering. Master Modes 1.x, 2.0, whatever you want to call it, this iteration of the flight model is supposed to help lay the groundwork for balancing ships around engineering, item, and component crafting, announced at CitizenCon 2024. We don't know much about their intentions other than what was discussed during last year's surprise IAE show featuring Chris Roberts Wrangler, Rich Tyra, as well as John Crew. The information was a little bit hard to follow initially, but after rewatching multiple times, here's where I think we're going with the flight model. Master modes as we know it, switching between SCM and nav, will be gone and sort of replaced by soft mode switches using engineering presets instead, giving more agency to single-seater pilots and multi-crew engineers. Nav and SCM speeds will merge into a single speed and throttle, closer to current SCM speeds, removing the friction of switching modes with added freedom for you as a player to acquire more speed by either using better or crafted components and making tweaks to your ship's power management. A new long-distance travel mode will be introduced called Quantum Boost, which is a speed range between SCM and quantum travel, up to 1/10 of quantum travel speed. This will use the quantum bubble of your quantum drive, meaning you won't actually experience G-force limitations like you do in nav mode. However, you will not be able to have your shields online while your quantum drive is engaged, meaning pilots will still need to make that choice in combat. Weapons, however, will now be available to you at all times. The idea behind Quantum Boost was to fill the gap for mid-range travel, e.g. 500 kilometers to nearby POIs, which is still just too slow in nav mode when a quantum marker is unavailable. Of course, this is all subject to change and we'll no doubt learn more in upcoming ISCs and SCLs as we get closer to something more tangible, but I'd expect and hope for experimental Arena Commander modes and plenty of testing of some of the changes between now, 4.1 and beyond. One feature I felt was really integral to Pyro's success was the improved reputation and progression system which didn't make the cut in 4.0. This feature is incredibly important for preventing Pyro from just becoming this chaotic murder hobo paradise, which for me and many others I'm sure is a lot of fun for now, but it will get old quick and is completely unsustainable from a gameplay perspective. We need rewards and consequences for attacking certain players and gangs based on their affiliation with progression, access, and rewards to incentivize working for particular factions. So what can we expect moving into patch 4.2 sometime in Q2 or early Q3? We might start seeing the Valakar World Boss event hitting the PTU for a late Q2 or Q3 release. Development on the Valakar, according to Zach Priest, was quite far along, and this edition would make a great headliner for a big quarterly update, probably titled something like the Monster Hunter patch, alongside a big marketing push where CRG will probably sell a bunch of ships, packages, skins, and specialized FPS gear. Which brings me on to my next prediction, that gear specialization might start coming online around the same time, with features like FPS scanning. We got more detail on this during the Dress to Kill panel at CitizenCon, where gear, clothing, and specialized items helped you excel in certain roles as a player. We might start seeing more gear archetypes entering the loot pool and in places like contested zones, as well as some low-end gear types possibly becoming available in shops. The flight model will also continue to be developed and discussed with wars fought on all fronts as we tweak speed limits, G-forces, components, engineering balance, new ships, and everything else that will impact Star Citizen's flight model moving forward. The Master Mode wars are far from over, and CIG will no doubt continue wrestling for something that works well into 2026. You know this to be true, my friends, but at least my man Avenger 1 won't run out of content anytime soon. Elements of Genesis and Starchitect could start coming online throughout the year in the form of resource nodes and smaller sectors added across Stanton and Pyro, possibly even featuring our first look at Maelstrom in action with things like destructible walls around the settlements. Personally, I don't expect to see much of Maelstrom beyond a few destructible walls and environments until much further in the future, just based on the workload I imagine it requires to get everything Maelstrom ready, and how insanely demanding it would be on the back end for this early iteration of server meshing. Which takes us into the final quarter of the year and closer to answering the question, after 13 years of development, is the worst of Star Citizen's development actually behind us? You might have noticed there isn't a huge amount of core tech to talk about this year. Less ums and ahs, less prerequisites and dependents, and more actual features and content instead. As someone who much prefers playing and talking about features over tech I don't fully understand, this is a relief. CIG pledged to make this the year of playability, and like I've said, they made this statement before. The difference this time is that we are armed with a somewhat successful server mesh and a playable second system with up to 600 players, up drastically from 100 to this point. And while this will obviously require more work throughout the year to maintain and grow, it feels like there's less uncertainty with regards to tech and more demand now for features, content, and playability than ever before. There's just one black cloud looming in the distance still, and I'd say that's dynamic server meshing. Although I can't pretend to know where CIG is with all this, or when we'll start being subjected to the torture of testing it, or whether it's even all possible. All I can say is I think I trust in Mr. Benoit and the mad science guy working on it. In a recent interview with Benoit, he sounded pretty confident, citing dynamic server meshing should be easy and that with elements of 30k recovery working the way they do now, we already sort of have some dynamic server meshing already. So to answer the question, is the worst of SC's development behind us? I would say cautiously and optimistically, yes, at least in terms of catastrophic technical implications that lead to these long periods of unrest and unplayability within the community. We're hopefully soon to be past that now once a stable version of 4.0 is on the live servers and the majority of backers can play and test again, but I've been here long enough to know anything can happen. What else can we expect to wrap this year up with, and will we get another rough Christmas patch delivery? Well, to answer the question, we have to think about CIG's plan for CitizenCon 2955. What will they show, what are the headliner reveals, and how can they hit a double whammy by showing stuff at CitizenCon that will make its way into the winter update? First of all, I expect that they'll demonstrate their progress with base building. We should hopefully see a more refined demo of base building as well as crafting, and I imagine they'll be showing off some parts of this gameplay loop that they can announce will be in our hands by the end of the year, likely accompanied by a ship and or ground vehicles that complement the gameplay loop and can be sold during IAE and the winter update release. So for Star Citizen 4.3, I do expect some basic elements of base building, probably with the functionality of the CSV Builder variant at least. I don't imagine we'll be able to build anything spectacular, but I do hope we'll have access to at least one utilitarian style building, like a mining rig, which could take advantage of resources distributed by the Genesis tool. We might also see some minor settlement style buildings that we can place a basic fabricator inside to craft basic weapons or equipment, sort of like the ones we've seen in the CitizenCon demonstration already. So what other predictions do I have for CitizenCon and thus the winter update? Well, I'll probably make another more detailed prediction video sometime this year, but we'll obviously see a big update on the systems previewed last year, particularly the Nyx system, and probably a live jump and demo inside a mostly finished Levski. CIG's lore team recently elaborated on their plans for Nyx, and much like Pyro, it stands to change a lot from the lore we know, so I expect a lot more time will be needed for CIG to flesh out the system with gameplay and content. If they can take advantage of tools from Genesis and Starchitect though, this shouldn't take as long as Pyro did, but I don't expect we'll be playing in Nyx, besides possibly some tech preview tests, until 2026. Lastly, I think we could start to see some elements of narrative-style content make its way back into Stanton and Pyro, utilizing existing missions givers like Clovis Darnley, Constantine Hurston, and Wallace Klim as concepting and testing for the overarching 1.0 player narrative that they showed off their intentions for at CitizenCon starts moving in 2026. Aside from that, throughout the year, we will likely see a reintroduction of some dynamic events like Jumptown, while others like Siege of Orison or Xenothreat take a back seat in the face of drastically increased player counts, where, unless I'm missing something, I don't see them working without instancing or some big changes, and I don't think we're anywhere near instanced gameplay in the PU yet. Thanks for watching, everybody. I look forward to being wrong or right on any of these predictions, and don't forget to let me know yours down below.